Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I am your host, and today we are taking a new deep dive into some pretty heavy material.
We really are. It is quite a lot to unpack today.
Yeah, and usually, when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision, right? Like engineering.
Right. Yeah.
You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, there it is.
Yeah, it is very binary, broken or not broken. It is clean, and honestly, I think it brings a lot of comfort to people. We like things to be visible and easy to categorize.
We do. But then you step into the world of human guilt. You step into the unquiet conscience, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just, well, it is broken.
Yeah.
We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky, and I want you, the listener, to think about this for a second. Have you ever felt the unrelenting weight of an old, guilty conscience?
Oh, that is a heavy question.
Right. Or maybe you have questioned who is actually in control when people act with sheer, unadulterated malice. That is the tension we are walking into today.
And it is a real tension.
It is. We have a massive amount of material to cover. We are pulling from two exhaustive theological and exegetical treatises that analyze Genesis chapter 50, verses 15 through 21.
Which is such a dense passage.
It really is. Our mission today is to unpack the collision between human guilt, the demand for justice, and the staggering reality of God's absolute decree.
And, the setting for this collision is magnificent. It is incredibly tense. We're looking at the closing moments of the patriarchal era.
Set the scene for us a bit.
Sure. So
Yeah.
the global superpower of Egypt stands as the backdrop here. The family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is totally isolated in the region of Goshen.
Right.
And the aged patriarch Jacob has just died. With his last breath, this unquiet dread is waking up in the minds of his sons.
We are starting precisely where the biblical text begins, with the death of a father exposing a very fragile, terrified human conscience.
Yes.
Let's set the historical clock. It is the 17th century BC, right? The brothers have lived in Goshen under Joseph's protection for 17 years. That is 17 years of eating Egyptian grain, raising their flocks, and, well, living in apparent peace.
Yeah, apparent peace is the key phrase there.
Right, because what does 17 years of waiting for the other shoe to drop actually do to a person's mind?
It creates an unbearable psychological pressure cooker. I mean, think about Joseph's position. He holds absolute political authority over food, land administration, and survival in the entire Egyptian empire.
He is second only to Pharaoh.
Right, he answers to no one except Pharaoh. So with Jacob dead, the brothers suddenly believe Joseph's kindness was nothing more than a facade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they assume he maintained this peace strictly out of respect to their father. In their minds, the shield is gone, and they expect a sort of retribution to fall immediately.
The psychology of that is staggering to me. They've been eating food provided by his hand for nearly 2 decades.
2 decades, yeah.
He gave them the best land. He sustained their children during a global famine. Yet the moment the patriarch stops breathing, their minds snap right back to the trauma they caused.
Because they do not trust his grace at all.
What does that tell us about the human mind and how it processes guilt?
Well, the sources argue that it speaks to the theological reality of total depravity.
Unpack that a bit for us.
No. This concept means that sin affects every part of our being. That includes our reasoning and our expectations. The brothers are projecting their own depraved standards onto Joseph.
So they assume he thinks just like they do.
Spot on. An unregenerate, guilty conscience cannot conceptualize unconditional grace. Because they know what they would do if they had his authority and his grievances, they assume he will do the precise same thing.
Wow.
They measure his capacity for mercy by the small, wicked standard of their own hearts.
So sin has a remarkably long memory.
Oh, very long.
Time passing does not heal a transgression against God's holiness. It simply suppresses it until circumstances change. It is almost like, think about a ruthless debt collector.
Okay.
Is unconfessed guilt like a debt collector who knows you owe a massive sum, but they just wait patiently for your guarantor to pass away before finally knocking on your door to collect?
That is a perfect way to frame it. The debt collector knows the debt is valid. The brothers know their sin was evil.
They sold him.
Right. They sold their own flesh and blood into slavery for 20 pieces of silver.
Mm-hmm.
Time does not erase the moral weight of that action. The universe does not just forget.
No.
When external securities fall away in this case, the physical presence of Jacob, the conscience, begins to ask whether judgment has simply been delayed. They are terrified that the bill has finally come due.
The sources actually bring up a striking statistic here to connect this ancient history to us today.
Yeah, this was fascinating.
It really was. They note that over 85% of individuals in Western societies struggle with chronic, unresolved guilt.
That is a massive number.
It is huge. And the text argues that modern secular psychology attempts to heal this spiritual wound through therapeutic philosophies, but fails entirely because it bypasses the blood of Christ. How does the author explain that failure?
Well, the author points out that secular therapy often tries to rename the wickedness to make it more palatable.
Like giving it a softer label.
Right. It might call a sinful action a mistake,
Huh?
an immaturity, or blame it on family systems, while completely ignoring personal responsibility.
Interesting.
But the brothers do not need someone to tell them their betrayal was a product of a dysfunctional sibling dynamic.
No, they know what they did.
Yeah. The conscience cannot be tricked into peace with new vocabulary. It demands actual pardon. The author argues that true peace only comes when the moral debt is actually paid, which requires an objective atonement, not just a subjective change of perspective.
Because they are gripped by this terror, they take action. But rather than resting in the truth of Joseph's character, they invent a desperate, manipulative lie.
They do.
They calculate that Joseph harbors a specific type of hatred. So they send a messenger with a fabricated story, saying, "Your father commanded before his death." And I want to point out to you, listening right now, there is zero biblical record of Jacob ever saying this.
None at all.
They're putting words in a dead man's mouth to save their own skin.
And the language they use is incredibly revealing here. They assume Joseph is holding on to a specific Hebrew word for hatred, which is sitam.
Satan.
Yeah. In English, it translates to bearing a grudge, but that phrasing does not capture the weight of it. This word is exceedingly rare. It is used only 6 times in the entire Old Testament.
Only 6 times.
Just 6. It signifies a satanic animosity that waits for the perfect moment to strike. It is a brooding, calculated malice.
Is it used anywhere else in Genesis?
Yes, and this is the fascinating part. It is the precise same word, Satan, that Esau harbored against Jacob after the stolen blessing.
Oh, the family history repeating itself.
Right. Esau said he would wait until his father died, and then he would kill Jacob. The brothers are mapping that exact family history onto Joseph. They assume Joseph has been playing a long, calculated game of political survival, waiting for 17 years to unleash this Satan.
That shows how blind they are to who he has become.
Completely blind.
They send this fabricated message pleading, "Please lift up the transgression of your brothers and their sin." The text highlights the Hebrew verb nasa here. Why is that word significant?
So nasa means to carry away. It is identical to the language used in the sacrificial system.
Like carrying away the sin of the people.
Right. They are asking him to bear the weight of their sin, to carry it away so they do not have to be crushed by it. Notice that they use weighty moral language. They do not minimize what they did.
Right, they own it to some extent.
They call it transgression, sin, and evil. But they are demanding he carry it away based on a lie.
Why do human beings do that? I mean, when we feel the terror of divine justice, we immediately try to manufacture our own mediators instead of just asking for grace. We grab onto anything we can to shield ourselves.
It is the default setting of the fallen human heart.
Mm-hmm.
We are terrified of standing naked before the judge.
Yeah.
The brothers use the sacred memory of their dead father as an emotional shield.
Right.
They say, Jacob commanded you to forgive us. They are trying to force Joseph's hand through a fabricated mediation. They think they need leverage to get grace.
Now, the sources make a really interesting theological parallel here. They compare this fabricated message from Jacob to the Roman Catholic system of auricular confession and purgatorial calculations.
Yes, they do.
And I want to pause here and neutrally clarify to you, the listener, that we are impartially reporting the source's theological critiques. We are not endorsing specific religious or political viewpoints here, but simply conveying the author's ideas regarding self-righteous guilt.
Right, just unpacking the argument the author is making.
Right. The author's point is to highlight how humans attempt to find safety apart from the finished grace of the king. They argue these are human attempts to mediate their own salvation.
Yeah, the author's critique centers on the fact that any attempt to insert a human mechanism between the guilty conscience and the offended party, or, between the sinner and God, is a failure to grasp the reality of true grace.
Like trying to strike a bargain.
Exactly that. The brothers are trying to negotiate a treaty. They are offering a transactional deal. Our dad said you have to do this. But grace cannot be negotiated. It can only be received with empty hands.
That brings us to Joseph's staggering reaction. We transition from the brothers' fear-driven manipulation to the tears of a governor.
Such a powerful moment.
Joseph does not react with anger. He does not yell. He weeps. The Hebrew word is baka. Why does he cry?
Well, these tears are fascinating because they are born of pastoral grief, not weakness or manipulation.
So he is not just feeling sorry for himself.
No, not at all. Joseph is grieved that after 17 years of lavish provision, they still treat him like a pagan tyrant. They still do not know his heart. He has given them the best of Egypt, and they still live in the spiritual bondage of fear. He weeps because their view of him is so incredibly small.
And then, after sending the messenger, the brothers physically arrive. They discard the safety of distance, and they fall flat before his face. The phrase is nafal lepanah. They offer themselves as permanent bondservant.
And the irony in this room is thick enough to cut with a knife. By voluntarily submitting and falling on their faces, they are fulfilling the very prophetic dreams from Genesis 37 that caused them to sell Joseph in the first place.
Oh, the sheaves of wheat.
Right. Think about the sheaves of wheat bowing down. Think about the sun, moon, and stars bowing down. The dreams that provoked their murderous hatred are now fulfilled in their desperate plea for survival. They were trying to become slaves to the brother they sold into slavery.
But Joseph stops them with a massive rhetorical question. Am I in the place of God? Hatahat Elohim ani. By asking that, he establishes a strict, impenetrable boundary. The fear of God restrains his personal retaliation. He submits to divine justice rather than building a little throne for his own ego. He refuses to absolutize his pain, right? He refuses to make himself the Lord over the narrative.
Precisely. Having authority under God is a stewardship, not a weapon. A leader who fears God knows they are not autonomous.
Right, they answer to someone higher.
Right. If you believe you are the highest authority in the room, your ego dictates your actions. When someone offends you, you use your position to crush them. But if you know that the ultimate judge is watching, you realize your authority is delegated. You are meant to protect, nourish, and correct justly. The safest person to be around is the one who knows they are not God.
The material actually brings this into a modern context, looking at how Joseph handles his own history of trauma. The author outlines an argument against the modern culture of victimhood in frameworks like critical race theory.
Yes, the source spends a good amount of time on this.
And once again, I need to impartially remind you listening that we take no political sides here, left or right. We are strictly reporting the source material's perspective on how Joseph's theological worldview contrasts with modern grievance-based frameworks.
Right, just looking at the contrast the text draws.
So no matter where your political compass points today, the author's critique is worth looking at. They claim these ideologies produce bitterness and a demand for reparations, contrasting them with Joseph. They point out that Joseph had every right to claim victim status. I mean, he was betrayed, enslaved, falsely accused, and imprisoned, yet he rejected that status due to his reliance on divine sovereignty.
The contrast the author draws is centered on where one finds their identity. If identity is rooted in historical trauma and perceived oppression, the result is endless division and a constant demand for the scales to be balanced by human hands.
Right.
Joseph anchors his identity in the absolute sovereignty of God. Because of that, he can look at his abusers and not demand that they pay him back. His soul is anchored in something much higher than earthly justice. He trusts that God has already balanced the scales in his own sovereign way.
Which leads us directly into the doctrinal zenith of this entire narrative. This is where the theology gets incredibly dense. We were talking about double agency and the sovereign decree.
This is the core of it all.
Joseph's refusal to take revenge rests entirely on the colossal theology of providence he confesses in the very next breath. Genesis 50, verse 20. As for you, you planned evil against me, but God planned it for good.
God's stated purpose was the preservation of the covenant seed and the physical life of many people during a catastrophic famine. But to really grasp the mechanics of this, we have to look closely at the Hebrew text.
Let's dig into that.
The verb used here is chashab. It means to calculate, devise, decree, or impute. Moses uses the exact same verb for the brother's action and God's action.
This is a massive point. Moses does not use different words to soften the blow.
No, he doesn't.
He does not say the brothers plotted and God redirected. He uses chashab both times. The self-same event was meticulously calculated by the brothers for destruction and simultaneously calculated by God for redemptive good.
This is the concept of compatibilism or double agency. It is the idea that God governs secondary causes like the free choices of human beings without violating their moral agency.
Okay, so He didn't force them to sin.
Right. God did not put the sin in the brothers' hearts. He did not force them to hate Joseph. They acted freely according to their corrupt natures. But at the same exact time, God acted freely according to his holy nature, decreeing that their wicked action would be the precise vehicle for his salvation. Both agencies intersect at the exact same historical event.
Let me push back on this a bit, because this is where a lot of people get tripped up. Does this mean God is just a brilliant chess player?
What do you mean?
You know, he sits back, waits for humans to make a bad move, and then he quickly calculates a counter move to fix the board. Help us clarify the difference between a reactive God and a sovereignly decreeing God.
That is a crucial distinction. A reactive God, like the chess player analogy, implies that God is surprised by the opponent's move and has to quickly figure out a way to fix it.
Right.
That is the view of open theism, which argues God does not know the future free choices of humans. But the word chashab obliterates that idea. God did not react to the human choice after the fact. The primary undergirding reality was God's sovereign decree. He planned the end from the beginning.
Wow.
The brothers' wicked intentions were the secondary causes utilized to accomplish the primary decree. God is not playing catch-up. He is writing the script while the actors freely choose to speak their lines.
So it completely challenges systems like Arminianism, which often tries to protect God's reputation by distancing him from the evil actions of men.
Yes, it does.
But this text says God chashab it. He decreed it. He calculated it for good. If God had not decreed this specific series of traumatic events, if he had just let the famine wipe out these men in Canaan, the messianic line of Judah would have been extinguished.
Spot on. God used the greatest evil in their family history to secure the survival of the very men who committed the evil. This text defends the classical Protestant position. God governs all things without being the author of sin. The brothers are 100% responsible for their malice, and God is 100% sovereign over the outcome.
This history is not an isolated family drama. It is the blueprint for the entire gospel and the preservation of the church. Think about the original audience hearing this. Moses wrote this narrative for the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, surrounded by hostile nations.
Yeah, imagine standing in the desert, staring at the fortified cities of Canaan, feeling entirely inadequate. You were a nation of former slaves.
They must have been terrified.
Absolutely. Moses gives them this history to give them unshakable confidence in Yahweh's rule over global empires. He is telling them, if the global superpower of Egypt and a catastrophic famine could not abort the plan of God, then the petty kings of Canaan stand absolutely no chance.
Joseph functions as one of the clearest Old Testament types of Christ. The parallels are staggering when you lay them out side by side.
They really are. Jesus, like Joseph, was the uniquely beloved son.
Right.
Both were hated and envied by the religious authorities of their day. Both were stripped of their garments. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30.
Similarities just keep going.
Yeah, both descended into a pit. Joseph into the cistern and the prison, Jesus into the tomb. And both were exalted to the right hand of the throne, given absolute authority to save the very people who betrayed them.
And the cross of Christ is the cosmic realization of Genesis 50, verse 20. The sources cite Acts chapter 2, verse 23. Peter stands up and says that wicked men crucified the Son of God, yet it was executed according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God.
The cross was not an accident. It was not a tragedy that God had to hastily fix by initiating a resurrection.
It wasn't plan B.
No, not at all. The cross was the eternal decree of the Father, executed through the free, wicked agency of men. The absolute worst deed of human rebellion in the history of the cosmos was decreed by God for the absolute salvation of his people. God used the murder of his son to kill death itself.
I have to ask about the practical result of this theology. Sometimes a high view of sovereignty can make a person seem cold or calculating. They just say, well, God is sovereign, and they dismiss human pain. Does this doctrine make a person cold, or does it make them tender?
Well, a false understanding of sovereignty might make someone fatalistic or cold, but true theology produces warm mercy. Look at Joseph. His doctrine led to immense comfort.
He didn't just dismiss them.
Right, he did not just issue a legal pardon from behind a desk. He provided bread for them and their children. He spoke to their hearts. Christ does the same. He provides himself as the bread of life. True belief in a sovereign God should create the most patient, compassionate people on earth because they know how much unmerited grace they have received.
This narrative strips away self-righteousness entirely. It proves that the history of God's people is sustained by unmerited mercy, not human superiority. The brothers deserved wrath, and they were sent away as pampered heirs of the covenant.
And the author uses this to warn against the shallow, pragmatic trends of modern, seeker-sensitive movements.
How so?
Well, in the day of calamity, when you are facing real tragedy, therapeutic platitudes fail entirely. Telling someone to look on the bright side does not heal a shattered soul. The human soul needs the massive, towering God of Genesis 50, a God who rules the cancer cell, the car accident, and the malice of wicked men.
Yeah.
If God is not sovereign over the darkness, there is no solid ground for hope.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We looked at the terrifying persistence of an unquiet conscience.
We did.
We saw how human beings try to manufacture their own mediators out of fear. We witnessed a leader weeping because he understood the boundary between his authority and God's throne. And we stood at the summit of double agency, seeing the exact same action willed by man for evil and decreed by God for ultimate good.
And, the beauty of this text is that it does not excuse the evil. It calls the sin exactly what it is. It is transgression. But it declares that the evil is not the final word. The final word belongs to the sovereign decree of a covenant-keeping God.
Which brings us to a final, unaddressed question for you to ponder long after this audio ends. If God's sovereign decree utilizes the absolute worst human malice to secure the eternal salvation of his people, how might the hidden, seemingly mundane frustrations you faced just this morning be active, calculated brushstrokes in his design for your sanctification?
That is a great thought to leave with.
Think back to that X-ray machine we talked about at the very beginning. When you were standing in the murky, confusing landscape of human conflict and guilt, looking for a clean, straight line to explain your pain, remember that you do not need an X-ray to prove the bones are there. You need the great physician who calculated the break, designed the healing, and is holding the entire hospital in the palm of his hand.